Dr. Harry Edwards joins me here on the Rich Eisen Show. Do you agree with that assessment, Dr. Edwards?
Absolutely. Absolutely. He's absolutely correct, and I'm glad that he has the courage to step up and say it. There's no question about that, and I think that we really need to take an assessment of what we're supposed to be about in the National Football League. We have a league where we have people playing under contract who committed murder. We have people who came back in the league after being convicted of dog fighting and dog killing, people who've been charged with rape, driving under the influence, vehicular manslaughter, beating on women. They drafted a young man out of Oklahoma who hit a woman so hard he could have killed her over something she said. Give me a break. But all of that's okay, and people don't mind going out and cheering for that. But if somebody takes a knee and says essentially, we are better than this under circumstances where between 1882 and 1968, when Dr. King was killed, this country averaged 40 lynchings of black men, women, and children a year. From 1968 until 2014, we have averaged over 140 black men, women, and children shot down in the streets and even in their homes and cars by police officers in this country, not to speak of over 5,000 murders, fratricidal murders a year in the African-American community, owing largely to the circumstances under which these people are forced and compelled to live. So we need to, you can be honest when you can't be right. And do I support Mr. Bennett? Absolutely, because it's the truth.
When was the last time you spoke to Colin Kaepernick, Dr. Edwards?
I spoke to Cap maybe 3 months ago. Basically, I try not to get too much. He has a management team which does an excellent job, and I think that too many people in his ear doesn't do anybody a benefit. Not to speak of the fact that he's his own man. He does his own thinking.
So, I mean, but you also understand that there could be, and I'm just throwing this out there, that a football reason as to why he has not been signed. At least that's some people saying that in terms of the amount of money he's asking for and his demand about wanting to start or anything. So you're unfamiliar with any of his stances on that front?
No, I'm very familiar with him. But what you're arguing in when you put that out there is that there are 64 starters and backups who are on rosters who are better than Kaepernick, not to speak of 32 clipboard holders who are better than Kaepernick, and no one can find any logical or rational football basis to bring him into camp at least to compete. I don't buy that. That is not only irrational; it's the height of sophistry. The veracity of that kind of statement is laughable. So you simply can't argue that.
Dr. Harry Edwards, Professor Emeritus of UC Berkeley, joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. So why do you think that there is no, if you want to put a fine point on it, courage of conviction by one NFL team right now?
Well, I think that people are looking to see how circumstances evolve. I think that they are concerned. As somebody said, the reaction could run anything from a letter from Donald Trump to some gaggle of fans who have access to a crayon who can write nasty letters and death threats and everything, and teams are reluctant to deal with that. Along with the fact that you also have to deal with cap issues. There are a lot of issues that roll into it. But at the end of the day, what it comes down to is that you have an athlete out there who has taken his team to a Super Bowl, who has taken his team to 2 conference championships, who had an extraordinary record of success prior to an injury, who is now over that injury, back up to playing speed, and as Pete Carroll said after working him out at Seattle, this guy is a starter, and nobody can find room for him in camp, even to come in and compete for a job. No, I don't care what the explanation is. That is one that nobody can rationally explain or excuse.
What would you say to somebody, Dr. Edwards, who's hearing you right now, maybe even for the first time, sitting there saying, yes, but he took a knee on the American flag in front of God and country. Yes, he also put on socks, practiced in socks that had a police officer's hat on top of a pig. and that is something that they cannot get past. What do you say to somebody like that, Dr.
Well,
Edwards?
they can get past murder. They can get past vehicular manslaughter. They can get past drug abuse. They can get past somebody hitting a woman hard enough that he could have possibly killed her. They can get past domestic violence. They can get past all of that. They can get past even some owners who have been accused of rape. They can get past all of that. Then don't tell me anything about some pig socks, which even Colin said that was a mistake. After I talked to him about that, he said, hey, that was a mistake. And that is something that does not move the conversation forward. But as far as him taking a knee, hey, look, I've lectured at every major institution in this country for all practical purposes, 1,300 lectures over the last 50 years. Mm-hmm. I went to West Point and lectured, and I'm standing there as they're playing the national anthem with these young people who know when they come out of there, they're not going to a major corporation or to the NFL or on to some Ivy League school and get a PhD. They're probably going to go to Afghanistan. They're going to go to Iraq. And they're standing there, and they're playing the national anthem, and it brought tears to my eyes. They know when this country called, they didn't ask about the politics of the war, or how we're going to pay for it, or is there an exit strategy, or who's the president. They stepped forward voluntarily and said, send me. You have to honor that. But there's a backside to that, and it's in the very first line of our United States Constitution. It says, we the people, in order to in order to form a more perfect union. It doesn't say we the people with the exception of athletes. It doesn't say we the people when everybody is comfortable with the statement that we make. And as Colin looked around and saw these summary executions, saw the injustice, saw the incarceration rates, saw the lack of resources and so forth in this community, what he essentially said is that we're better than this. And when you won't listen to that kind of a statement, I would have been gratified if the man who went into that softball game practice yesterday and started shooting people, if he had waited until the game started and they played the national anthem and he went out and took a knee and said, I just want to remind you of what you're really here in Washington, D.C. for, I would have been gratified at that instead of doing what he did. This is what Cap was trying to do. This is the message that he's trying to send. He's saying that burden falls on we the people, not we the presidents or we the courts or we the Congress or we the mayors or governors. The Constitution in the very first line says we the people, and that's critical. Mm-hmm. That's important.
Well, how does this compare, Dr. Edwards, to the 60s? I mean, how do these times that seem to be so troubled and the discourse so widely disparate, how does this compare where there's an athlete that is not employed right now compared to, for the lack of a better analogy, anything that was going on in the 60s with athletes speaking up?
Ali wasn't employed after he took a stand on the Vietnam War. Thomas Smith and John Carlos were not employed after they took a stand for justice and human rights. Bill Russell was called Felton X after he stated that we have some problems not just in the South, but in Boston. You had people across the board. Kurt Flood was unemployed after he said that we have to have the dignity of and respect to at least be able to have some say in where we work as American citizens. He was unemployed. So there's nothing new about not being employed. And we're just lucky as a society that we have people who are still willing to pay that price in order to make a statement, in order to do something that you can't do in Russia, that you can't do in Saudi Arabia, that you can't do in Qatar, that you can't do in China, that you can't do in Cuba. He can step forward and say, hey, here is where we Americans begin to deal with these issues.
And here, but Dr. Edwards, and just if you don't mind,
no,
because this just brings up, I guess, to round off the conversation best we can, the ultimate conundrum with this, because what you just said is so right, that he does have the ability to do this, Kaepernick, in a society unlike those other countries that you named, but so many people can't get past the fact that he took a knee on the most symbolic aspect of that spirit in the flag.
Symbolic of what? Symbolic of what? Symbolic of standing there with your hand over your heart and singing a song while people are being shot down in the street? That's not what we Americans do. We deal with these issues. This goes back to slavery. This goes back to the civil rights movement. This goes back to the women's rights movement. This goes back to the voting rights movement. This goes back to all of those efforts to form that more perfect society. And it doesn't happen by standing there singing a song with your hand over your heart. It happens by people stepping forward and saying, we are better than this.
So just to, I guess, end the conversation, what do you think this means for athletes moving forward? Do you think fewer are going to say anything?
I think that it's going to continue. I think that just as Jackie Robinson stepped forward and paid a heck of a price, I'm convinced after talking to him as well as watching his career throughout from World War II until he died, that what he did shortened his life. The same as Smith and Carlos and Bill Russell and Jim Brown and Muhammad Ali and Arthur Ashe and Kurt Flood and all of those great athletes, Kenny Washington, Woody Strode, all those athletes who paid a price. It was so hard on Woody Strode, he said when he came out of UCLA and integrated the NFL in 1946 that if heaven is desegregated, I don't want to go. That's how hard it was on him. So at the end of the day, it's going to continue. These coming years are going to involve athletes dealing with issues that are well this side of the social political horizon. They will be taking stands, they will be paying prices, and there will be people who will be very unhappy about it. But there is nothing more American than a Jackie Robinson or Bill Russell or Smith and Carlos or an Arthur Ashe or a Colin Kaepernick, even if it takes them 50 years, or Muhammad Ali, even if it takes them 50 years to recognize it and feel comfortable with it.
Dr. Edwards, love talking to you. Always.
Thank you.
Thank you for the time.
You, brother.
Always.
Bye.
You got it. That's Dr. Harry Edwards.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on radio stations across the country and audience.
If you like that, please download our app. There's lots of fun things there other than just more of the videos you just saw. You can call us from the app. You can email us from the app. Just download it. Trust me, you'll enjoy it.